Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Jordan. Hi, Daniela.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh my gosh, I have a voice today.
Yay!
I
So
couldn't,
strange.
I was trying to join on my computer, but then I wouldn't have a voice. And then I thought, you know what, I'll wing it on my phone and see whether she can hear me. And I'm not like video ready because of our time zone difference, and tech being a nightmare, but hello.
Oh, hi. Well, it's so nice to have you here. No worries about being video ready. You can keep your camera off, whatever's cozy. Because it's probably like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock for you at night.
Yes, I'm in bed with a puppy, so it's just
Oh,
like
that's the best
not,
place
I
to
haven't got
be.
my business face on, so.
That is okay. I love that the animals are nearby. It's like I have
Ooh.
two cats on my desk right now and a dog that's been coming and going. So we're gonna see if they don't interrupt. Sometimes my cat comes in like a headbutt to my laptop, but it sits on a stand, so the whole laptop flips backwards. So I'm trying to like avoid that from happening.
I've just seen Jordan as well. She's in here, isn't she? I can see.
Yeah. Hi, Jordan. Yeah, you're keeping video off too. Oh no, that's too bad, Jordan. I'm sorry you're not feeling well. That's no fun. Well, we're just going to give it a little bit more time. I know I heard from quite a few people that they wanted to hop on today, so we're going to kind of see what sort of group we get. But I would love to hear from both of you that are already here if there's anything like in particular, like around launching or course design or anything like that, that you're like, I really hope we talk about this today, or I'd really love for you to answer it. You can either put it in the chat if you don't feel like talking, or Danielle, if you want to unmute and share, whatever is more comfortable for both of you.
I don't mind unmuting because Jordan's used to hearing my voice. My biggest problem is surrounding like more identity and branding, like on a higher level than, so if I'm listening to this, I'm not ready to create a course mainly because I have like a problem higher up, if that makes sense to you. Like trying to work out whether I go, I've had a name change. There's Jordan knows about this behind the scenes, but whether to go with Daniela or a different name that I use in public, like at the moment, or whether to brand myself under a company name, whether to have a face, whether to, so that kind of, I'm interested in running courses in the long term. You know, I work for Jordan anyway, so that's something that they encourage me to do, working for Civilized Animal Productions, but it's, the problem is higher up, if that makes sense. So I don't know how relevant is to what you'll be discussing today, because Jordan did just give me this link and I'm very new. I've just come in and appeared.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I can definitely chat about it too, because I have gone through like 4 name changes since I started my business. 4, 5, 4. Yeah, I've gone through a lot. So I'm always happy to kind of share like my own journey and how I kind of landed on there. So I can share about that right now while we're waiting for more people to join. But I see Jennifer's here and Nikki's here, which is so nice. See more people coming in. So yeah, I know when I first started my business and I was kind of deciding like brands and things, having a name like Emily Walker is like so common. My name definitely, like if you Google me, there are like 5,000 Emily Walkers out there. There were like 3 floating around in my city, and my city's not even that big. So at first I was like, I'm not using my name, not using my name. And so at first I tried like picking a name that like, it was in French and it was really meaningful to me. And then I realized no one could pronounce it and no one could say it. And I was like, that's maybe not the best. So then I very rapidly rebranded to Course Wellness, because that was like something that people could say. And that's really what I was focusing on, was like how to make your course healthy and strong and like not have it suck like the majority of courses we've seen out there. But then I realized I was getting a lot of feedback from people being like, well, do you just design courses in the wellness space? Like, are you only in health and wellness? And I was like, no, I'm not getting ready to rebrand again because my audience is confused. And that's when I like was feeling kind of like pressured again to do things relatively quickly. And I became Modern Leaders Co., which is still my Instagram handle, because it is impossible to get an Emily M. Walker Instagram handle. They are all taken, all variations of it. And so I was like, well, what does my brand stand for? And I was like, well, I really feel like it is this like new modern age of like leaders stepping into like, how they're sharing their knowledge and making an impact on their community. And, for a while it resonated. And then I started getting feedback from people being like, well, do you teach leadership? And are you pivoting away from course creation? And I was like, all of this is just creating so much confusion. I'm just going to use my freaking name. And so that's how I landed
you
on.
say that. I just did a quick Google and I come up with an actress first called Emily Walker. So I completely understand your problem.
Yeah, there's definitely like, it's not, if you type, oh, hi, I've got a dog with a squeaky toy behind me now. So we might hear squeaks in the background. Yeah, if you go like Emily Walker courses or like course creation, like then I pop up, which is great. But definitely like just the name isn't always the best. But in general, the kind of advice that I heard was like, if you want to be the face of your brand, you want to have that kind of intimacy and like that connection, which I very much like wanted with my people, and that's what I wanted to cultivate. That's ultimately why I decided, I was like, I don't want to hide anymore. Like, I am the face of my brand. I work one-to-one with my clients, even in my high ticket programs. Like, it's me. And so that's how I ultimately decided. I was like, I'm going to use my name, opposed to using a company name, which is kind of a company, and it can be great if there's like collaboration and multiple people involved, and you maybe want to sell it down the road and you're not going to be like the face of it. That's kind of how I landed on my decision.
So do you feel like you went with the name that people knew? So I don't want to steal any airtime if anyone else has any questions. I'm really bad at following the chat at the same time. But did you go with the name that you felt you were most known for? Because I basically have a name that people have known for a very long time, with maybe some baggage that I don't necessarily want to take forward. But then I also have, so I guess I will be the face of the brand. It's just which identity to fall under, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, I'm all about like energetic alignment. So I think even with you saying like, oh, it has some baggage that I don't want to really bring with me, then I would say that's probably not the right one. Like, I think it should be a name that feels like really good for you. People can be retrained. I've seen really big name, influencers get married and their last name changes, and people still follow along. My personal decision is, so when I get married this year, I am changing my name legally, but I'm keeping my maiden name for my business. So my business is going to stay Emily Walker, but my name in real life is going to change, mainly because my fiance's last name is very hard for people to pronounce. So it's like, it's more like a practical decision on that standpoint.
Right. Okay, great. Now that answers my question. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I see Erica says that she's transitioning to her name right now. Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in like that personal brand for sure, which I love. Yay. Oh my goodness, got such a good group. And I'm sure more people are going to trickle in. I know I heard from some people that they were going to be coming a bit later. So what I would just love for all of you that kind of just popped on is, if you have any like burning launch questions that you like absolutely want to make sure that we cover today, please pop them in the chat so we can definitely make sure that we go through it. I'm just going to kind of walk through where, my philosophy around launching and kind of the core components you need to keep in mind when you're kind of deciding your approach to launching and how you want to launch and that type of thing. And then we'll make sure that there's like absolutely lots of time for questions and that type of thing. Like Erica says, do I have to launch? And Jordan's like, evergreen versus live launching. Yes. So we're definitely going to talk about that, which I love. And so if at any point you need me to like slow down or clarify things, or like, you're like, wait, I want to know a little bit more about this, feel free to use the raise hand feature on Zoom. That's really great for me to be able to like see that you have a question, or if you want to like come on video and like wave and be like, I have questions, please let me know. And for those of you who are like, I'm not going on video and I don't want to talk, you can just pop it in the chat. That's also totally fine. So where I would love to start is just kind of reframing what launching actually is, because I find there's a lot of like weight that sits on the word launch in our online space. Like, it's I have to launch, or launch is coming up, like the launch strategy. And it seems like it's what everyone talks about, it's what everyone focuses on. You got to have the launch strategy. And as a result of there being like all of this like mystification, but like weight and like mystery and like all this stuff put on it, it stresses people out. Like, I've heard from my clients, they're like, I feel sick about the idea of launching. Like, it stresses me out so much. And it also makes us feel like we're always missing like a secret puzzle piece, because I think that's what a lot of people want to use to sell their programs, is they're like, this is the secret key to launching, or like, this is the proven formula to launching. And so there tends to be like so much weight that it just stresses you out, and then it makes it really not fun. And so really at the end of the day, when we strip away all the different approaches and all the different strategies and all the different things, launching is just a celebration of something you're bringing out into the world. It's showing up and it's sharing your creation, whether that is your program, Daniela, whether that's your new brand, whether it's a new website or whatever it is. It's really just going like, I have poured my love and my time and my energy into this thing. It's really, really freaking cool. And I think you should sign up because it's a great fit for you. And here's why. And when we kind of reframe it to this celebration, when we reframe it to just be like, I have this amazing thing, it can take a lot of weight off of feeling like, the way I like to compare it is it's the difference of, those like perfume samplers in the mall that like chase you down and like want to be like, try this perfume. And they're like really like kind of like trying to grab at you and you're like, ooh, like stay away from me. Versus when you like walk into your favorite store and they're like, oh, check out this new thing that we just have. And you're like, I love it here. This is amazing. It's a big energy shift, which can then make us feel like so much better. And it can take a lot of the stress away. And that's kind of like the reframe that I want you to kind of hold at the core of everything, because I'm going to walk you through, there's lots of different ways of launching. Like I'm not a one size fits all person. I'm not going to say there's only one way to do things. As we know, there's like an evergreen versus a live launch. So whether your program is available all the time versus whether it's only available short amounts of time. There's, whether we're launching with webinars and all that type of thing. There's lots of different things I'm going to walk you through today. But at its core, I want you to just kind of hold on to like, how do I want to feel during my launch? Do I want to feel like relaxed and expansive and like, this is great, I'm going to have a bubble bath? Do you want to feel like, wow, this is so exciting, like let's have a dance party, this is amazing, or somewhere in between, like kind of thinking about like, how do you want to feel and how do you want your people to feel? And how can we keep that at the center of this celebration? And like everything else is just like cherries on top. So that's the big thing that I like to kind of get across is like, there really isn't a launch secret. I know like a lot of people really want there to be, they want to be feel like, oh, if you just send the perfect email sequence, if you do the right webinar structure or whatever. But like, there's things that work and there's things that don't work. And it's going to be different for different people. And, anytime someone says like, this is guaranteed or it's proven, they're usually kind of blowing smoke. I just find that like, it's not, nothing's ever guaranteed. So all we can do is treat it with a sense of celebration and experimentation to see what do our people respond to, what do we respond to, and like, how can we honor our energy like throughout this whole process. And so what I want to do is start by talking about, I'm looking to my notes, so if you see me looking down, I want to talk about the kind of 4 different categories that I put launches into. And then we'll be focusing on one a little bit more than others. So the first category is what I call a launch event launch. So this is the typical launch that we see the most of. So a launch event can be a webinar, it can be a challenge, it can be a workshop. Typically it means there's some sort of event or something that kicks off the launch period. This is the one that we see the most. I think we've all probably seen some way, shape, or form of someone's webinar launch. But it doesn't have to be a webinar. That's why I say launch event, because there's lots of different things. So like Jordan said, it could be a virtual summit. It could be a series of course cafes on very specific topics. It can be lots of different things. So this is what we see the most often. This is kind of the standard way of launching. It's what I'm going to focus on the most today, but I want to let you know there are some other options available to you. So another option is what I call the beta launch. And this is more of the like, hey, I'm working on this thing. I need some testers. Can I find 10 people who want to sign up? It's a lot less formal. You don't need to have like a launch event. Like you don't need to have a webinar to get people into something that's more like I'm testing and tweaking. It's more sharing with your audience, being like, I just need, X amount of people at like a, reduced amount of rate or like something like that. So kind of the beta launch is a lot more informal. It can be really good if you're not confident with your curriculum. Like if you're like, I'm not sure how people respond to this, or I've never taught it in this format or something like that, and you just kind of want to test things out, having that transparency with your people if it's not like a fully fledged program. But, I'm still a big fan of still charging, but, it's a really like the beta launch can be a great way of just being like, hey, I want to test this thing out. Let's see how it goes. So that's the second kind. The third kind is similar, but it's a lot less public. And I call this kind of like the behind the scenes direct invitation launch. So this works really well for like higher ticket programs where you maybe have like a warm pool of clients, or you have people in your direct audience that you're like, this is a perfect fit for. So you could like send them a video or send them an email and just be like, I've created this thing. It's invitation only. I really think you'd be a great fit. Here's why. And so there's nothing like public facing. We're not seeing this on your Instagram or on your socials or anything. It's just kind of like behind the scenes, direct invitation. So that's one that definitely I find works better with high ticket programs because there's more of that intimacy. You know, I really love like actually just sending like personalized videos. So I'd be like, hi, Daniela, like I created this thing and I think it's great for you. Daniela, I'm just picking on you because your name's front and center on my thing. So this can be really, really great as well. It works well for beta or for full-fledged programs. And then the fourth type, which is one that like, I don't know, I feel like people shade it a lot, but like I think it's fun. And I call it just the announcement style of launch. So that's where you're just being like, I created this thing and it's amazing, check it out. And you're not necessarily doing the launch event. Like you're not doing a webinar or a workshop or that type of thing. You're just being like, I created this thing, it's awesome. So that's what I did when I first launched my toolkit group called Confidence. So it was a lower ticket product. Normally it's $297, but I was launching it for $147 during the kind of like announcement style. And I just had like a week and a half where I was just talking about it a lot. I was showcasing how awesome it was. I had some bonuses, that type of thing, but I wasn't forcing myself to do the webinar or doing like the perfect funnel or anything like that. I was just like, I created this thing. I've never seen anything like it. And it's absolutely incredible. You should probably sign up. So that is definitely an option for you. And so with all of these, once I've kind of introduced you to a few other factors to think about, we can spend some time talking through each one of your kind of cases and seeing like what's going to fit best for you. But I just like to throw the options out there because sometimes we can feel like we can only launch with a launch event. And if we do a launch event, it has to be a webinar. And anytime you're feeling the shoulds come up, that's usually a sign that you shouldn't. You're like, oh, I should do a webinar. I should do this or whatever. If it's starting to feel kind of like a drag, then asking yourself, like, what would feel fun? Like, what would almost feel like too fun to do for your launch? I always feel like that is something that can be a really good guiding point because at the end of the day, one of the most important things, I say the only, like one of the only important things that comes to your launch strategy is finding something that feels fun and not draining, because it does require a lot of energy to show up in whatever showing up looks like for you, whether it's live video or showing up on Instagram or sending emails to your list or like that type of thing. And so the more that you can find something that fuels you and energizes you and excites you, the more that's going to come through in your launch and the more genuine it's going to feel. I'm just going to just check in on the chat here to see. Oh, I see Danielle and Jordan are talking about using video ask for direct outreaches. I love that. Okay, so those are the four types of launches. Those are kind of the categories. And, you know, launches can really be customized within each of one of these, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. Before I move forward, do you have any questions about what I've shared so far?
Hey, Emily, Kelly,
Hi.
again. Quick question, and again, you might get to this, so just I'll shut up. If you're going, well, I'd shut up either way, but if you're going to, that's fine. Just let me know. But with, I was thinking of kind of doing, and I know it's not the Q&A section, but just real quick, like a soft launch with, kind of doing weekly, like webinars, like one a week, building up to when I officially launch, which is not going to be a huge event or anything. Anyway, my question is and they're going to be more like workshops than, on one single specific small topic. But I've read and heard probably from 3 to 4 different people in the industry that you shouldn't try not sell, but even introduce like a product or a course or some, in my case, a course, which I assume is what everyone or something like that we're looking into. If it's over like a certain price, you should get them on a quote sales call. That's, like if it was over like 1,500 to 2,000 mark, most people are going to be more reluctant or hesitant to buy at that price point from like attending 1 or 2 free workshops. I just didn't know if you'd ever heard that or if you've had it. Obviously I wouldn't do one webinar and expect people to sign up for $100,000 group or, solo coaching program, which I don't offer anyway, or would never offer that at that price point. I'm not worth it yet. But I just didn't know if you ever heard that, or what your kind of recommendations are. Cause I'm not a salesy person. I want to have fun. I don't want to be the sleazy, pushy. That's just not me. And intrusive, emailing people 15 times a day. Cart closes in 1 hour, cart closes in 10 minutes, cart closes in 5 minutes, 1 minute, all that. And that's just not me in my style of how I live my life.
Yeah. Yeah, such a great question. And so this is like multiple questions within that I want to dive into. So the first thing is that I know someone who sells a $25,000 program without a sales call, and it's all through evergreen automation. So anything is possible. I don't think there's any rules. But what it comes down to is that when we reframe what the purpose of a launch is, because I think sometimes we can feel that way. And I think it's because some of the dominant names in the industry, the way they structure their webinars has a little bit of that sleaze, where it's just like convince people or like get them on the webinar, but then the thing they actually want from the webinar, put it behind a payment gateway. And there's manipulation and there's fake scarcity and there's like all that stuff that just feels really icky. Whereas if we reframe it, so whatever we use for our launch event, and I saw, Daniela, you asked about like what some alternatives are to a webinar, which we can definitely chat about. The purpose of our launch event, or the purpose of our emails or anything we're sharing during our launch window, is to give our people everything they need to make an informed decision about whether our program is right for them. And one of the things they need is trust. And not like fake trust, like you can trust me, I'm an expert, but like actual, like, how do I feel when I'm on this workshop with Kelly? Like how, did I have a good time? Do I like her teaching style? Can she help me with what I want? And so that's why, I'm going to kind of get into the different components of a launch. Each one of these is to help educate and help prepare our people so that they have everything they need to make a decision. And also so that we can cultivate the relationships that if they make the decision to not buy in that moment, that's also okay, because people can come back to you later. And I think that a lot of approaches are like, hammer them with like fear and guilt and shame to the point that if they don't buy, you never see them again. And instead of just being like, you know what, I have this amazing thing. I can see that you have this issue and I'm the right person to help you with this. But if you don't buy right now, that's fine. Still friends. I'll see you around, like no issue, right? And so I think that's what we can really kind of dive into there. So that actually leads really, really nicely into what I was going to talk about next, which is the launch component. So thank you, Kelly. Those are such great questions. So I like to kind of, again, four. I don't know, normally I break everything into threes, but for some reason talking about launching, and we just have four again. So there's sort of four pieces or like phases in our timeline when we're doing a launch. And how long they are and what they look like changes depending on our program, our audience, our approach to our launch, that type of thing. So one of the biggest phases or biggest components that gets missed is what I call the pre-launch content runway. So this is the content that you are sharing with your people leading up to the kind of active launch period. And so whether this is an evergreen or a live launch, I say active in the sense that like where you're actively promoting it, or carts open, cart close. That's kind of the main difference between evergreen and live launch, is just, does the cart close, or does the time that you're shouting about it from the rooftop close? So the pre-launch runway is an intentionally designed period of time with very specifically chosen topics. So it's usually somewhere between 30 to 90 days. The more expensive of a program, the colder your audience, the more time that you need. And so this is very much where you are answering questions like, what do my people need to know? How do they need to feel? What do they need to be thinking? What mistakes or misconceptions or myths do they have around my topic area? Really thinking about what can I start shifting for my people so that when I present this offer, when I present this solution to them, they have everything they need to be ready for it. So this part's really, really important because we don't want to be like that friend from high school that joined an MLM and you haven't heard from them in 10 years and all of a sudden they pop up and they're like, does your life garbage? I have this solution for you. Check this out. And you're like, who are you? Like, we had math class together in grade 11, like, go away. we don't want to feel like that to our audience. We want to feel like we've been talking to them, we've been providing value, like we've been seeing them and hearing them. And so that they have this cultivation, this relationship with us, so that when we go like, hey, I created this thing, they can be like, wow, like I know you, I like your vibe, and I trust you that like whatever you've created is going to be awesome for me. So we have this pre-launch runway. And like I said, the amount of time that you spend on this kind of pre-launch content really depends on how expensive your program is, how warm your audience is. If you've been showing up and giving them blogs and workshops and Instagram posts and all the things, they're going to be warmer than someone that you like haven't spoken to in like a couple of months. So that's kind of like the first component that we need to think about. The second component is the time when we're promoting our launch event. So obviously, if you're doing a style of launch that doesn't have a launch event, you don't have this part. But this is where we're actively saying like, join my workshop, join my challenge, join my webinar, join this thing, sign up for my summit. This is the time where it's kind of the promotion before the promotion, where we're giving some sort of value, but we're funneling them into this launch event. And just to let you know, I will be speaking about launch events specifically after this. So we have the pre-launch runway, then we have the launch event promotion, then we have the cart open or the active sales time. And so the reason I kind of make that differentiation is because if you have what's called a live launch, which means the cart opens, people can buy, and at some point the cart closes and they cannot get into the program anymore. So that's a cart open, cart close, live launch. With Evergreen, it's a little bit trickier because it's like, well, if they don't buy now, they can buy later. So we want to think about something that we can do in that kind of active promotional period to kind of like fire them up. So this typically looks like bonuses or discounts or something that is time limited. This is how you can have a more successful evergreen launch, because if it's just like, hey, I have this thing, you can buy it now, you can buy it later, nothing changes if you buy it now or later, you might get some people coming in, you totally will. And there'll be some people who just kind of sit on the fence. So if you want to kind of help inspire the fence sitters, it can be nice to be like, save $100 or like get this time limited bonus or like something to kind of put a time bound element on it when you don't have the time boundedness of a cart close. Oh, cat, 1 second. So we have the cart open, that kind of active sales period. And then the kind of fourth component is when the cart closes or when that active sales time ends. So just to recap, we've got pre-launch content campaign, we've got launch event promo, then we have the start of our active sales period and the end of our active sales period. And that's kind of how we structure a launch timeline. And like I said, the timing of each of those things can shift and change. And so we'll definitely kind of talk through some scenarios, some opportunities, and kind of talk to your specific launches and how long those time periods should be. So I would love to know what questions you have on what I've shared so far, if any.
I have a couple, but I have a tendency to like jump in when nobody else is speaking. So I can give the chat a minute if that's useful.
Oh, go for it, Danielle, and then someone else can hop in after you. Sometimes we need that first person to ask, right?
So, yeah, I'm happy to be the first person, honestly. Like a background in theatre means I'm not afraid to be talking out loud. I said, I think I'm leaning towards a cross between the two. I'll give you context in a second, but I've said an evergreen launch campaign. So the way that you're speaking about launching an evergreen course and the content that drives towards that, but for an offer that has seasons. And the context is a podcast production company. I'm leaning towards that's like the umbrella, which is why I'm working out whether I'm the face of that brand or whether there's a brand that it. So right, so that's slightly confusing. But how do you feel about, because I don't know whether I've come into contact with, I'm trying to think how to word this. So the seasons would be that my openings for guests to come on my show, or for people to host their probably the guests, because for people to host their podcast with me, that would be evergreen and potentially open most of the time, because it's going to be hard to drive like interest towards that anyway. It's a bigger ask. But for people to come on my podcast or come on the podcast as guests of the people that I work with, if you're understanding what I'm saying, like that would operate in a season sense. Does that make sense to you? Or would that confuse? Do you see what I mean? Like to have the two running in conjunction?
I definitely don't think it would be confusing. I think like when in doubt, it's always just nice to have some place where people are interacting with you, whether it's on your mailing list, in the welcome sequence, on your website or whatever, where you just let them know, like, this is the seasonality in my business. Like, especially if it's something like that, where, I'm just trying to think, like, yeah, like with like the podcast guesting and things like that, where they might be looking for it. Yeah.
I don't want to have to manage an inbox of people asking whether they can come on the podcast all day, 365 days a year. And the podcast that I'm referencing when asking a question would be my own, and it would have seasons. So it's sort of like, join me. So it opens like, if you want to join me on this season. So what time frame would you recommend that I would open that, if you see what I mean? Or does it depend on whether I've got cold, warm leads who I'm talking to? Do you see what like, if I said to you, would you like to come on a podcast you've never heard of? Like, what kind of time frame, or Jordan, etc., anybody I know in my network, would you need to warm up to the idea where you might want to speak? Or do you find it easy to say yes to speaking opportunities?
I mean, personally, for me, I find it easy to say yes, as long as there's values alignment. And I think a lot of business owners feel that way, in the sense that they're like, being a guest on someone's podcast, especially if it has like a healthy audience, is such a value add, that it's less like, you're being like, here, can I give you this opportunity to like get in front of more eyes, versus like, hey, can I give you this opportunity to give me money? So there's like less of a it's a different type of transaction.
That's what I was picturing as the in. So I was picturing inviting people in my network to come on my podcast as a way to then open up a discussion about, do they have their own podcast? Would their brand benefit from a podcast? Would they like to collaborate one of the speakers that I'm working on another podcast with? Would they like their own? Like, that would come under the service that I would provide. So I suppose that's the in. But I guess I don't know what to launch first. Like, do I launch a podcast production company first so that people know the intent? Or do I launch I've been working on so many ideas it's all on the back burner, right? Because I also work, I work for Jordan, and I do 101 other things. So this is like pipe dream talking, but the clarity is helpful.
I know, like, so this is something like, when I have a client come to me and they have like an idea for instance, like a course ecosystem, like multiple moving pieces, whenever we're trying to decide where to start, there's kind of two different ways of looking at it. One is, what am I most excited about, in the sense of like, what feels fun and exciting and doesn't feel overwhelming? Like, what feels like kind of like that, not path of least resistance, but just like there's some flow there. That can be a really good indication of where to start. Or if you're like, I don't know, it all feels a bit overwhelming, I have no idea where to start, then choosing the one that starts your pipeline is usually the best place. So like in an ecosystem, it's like, where is the best place for people to enter that then you can nurture along the way? So that's kind of like the two different ways I look at it. And sometimes even just like sitting with it and like doing some journaling and being like, okay, how do I feel about this, can be really helpful.
Well, that works, because the answer to those two questions is the same. I'm more excited about starting my own podcast because, as you can tell, I can speak for England. And it's also the in for the rest of the business model that I'm looking at long term. So thank you. You've more than answered my question.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, great questions. I love this. And then I want to answer Jordan's questions here about, how do I feel about deadline funnel type evergreen launches, where there is an open or close or bonus deadline, but it's specific to each person? And the answer is, I hate it. I hate it so much. I feel very, very passionately about how much I hate this. And the reason I hate it is because it's fake. It's fake scarcity, which to me feels like lying to people you're trying to build a relationship with. Because I know if I sign up with a different email address, I can get that funnel offer again. Or if I refresh my thing, then the countdown starts. So I personally absolutely hate deadline funnel and everything it stands for. So I hope there's no like deadline funnel affiliates on this call. I think that real scarcity, where it's like, there are only 20 spots on this program so that I can keep things small and intimate. This bonus expires at the end of this week and it's never coming back because it's part of this launch. Or I'm only ever offering this program at this price now and it's going to go up. Where you, in that current moment, honestly and in integrity, can say, this is my truth, like this is real. Doesn't mean you can't change your mind later, but in that moment, you're like, it's not fake. But if you're like intentionally like leading people through something that you're just using tech to be like, there's a timer, there's this, that, or the other, like for me, it just feels really out of integrity, because like my trust and my connection that I have with my people is like everything to me. So yeah, I'm so glad to see everyone in the chat is like, it's abhorrent, I hate it so much. So Kelly, you're asking about like a fast action bonus. So again, like if it is like a fast action bonus, like we see this, for instance, like when people go through tiny offer funnels, where it's like you have your tiny offer and then there's like a bump and then there's like a one-time special thing. I feel like less annoyed about those because again, it's part of the funnel. They've already chosen to buy the tiny offer and then they've chosen the bump or they've chosen this thing. And very often, like usually it's like $97 at the end of the funnel, like that fast action, like one-time offer, they can access again at a different point if they need to. I always just find that like I like to play the long game with my people. And so I always ask myself, like, is this going to help the relationship or hurt the relationship? And if it might mean slightly less sales in the beginning. Like we're not going to be like, it's true that like a lot of these tactics are very like they get results because they're preying on people's like kind of FOMO and like scarcity and like that type of thing. It's kind of the same way that like in the fitness industry, like the radical juice cleanses and like the diet programs that promise like if you exercise nothing but cardio every day and only eat 1,200 calories, you're going to lose weight. It's like, yeah, you probably are for like 3 weeks and you're going to be absolutely miserable. And then, you know, you're going to weigh twice as much in a couple of months because it's not sustainable. And so it's the same approach I find with our courses where it's like, we might not see necessarily the huge volume of numbers coming in our first couple of launches. You might, depending on the audience size you have, it's not impossible, but very much you can have that opportunity to cultivate the long-term relationship with the clients so that when they're ready, they can come in. So thank you for those questions and for letting me rant about how much I hate deadline funnel. So great. Yeah, so Kelly, what you're saying here around the like the one-time only bonus if they enroll by the end of the week, if it's kind of timed to your actual launch, then I think that's totally fine. Definitely like thinking of like bonuses that happen within your launch window. Totally fine for sure. Okay, amazing. So now I would love to kind of talk to you a bit about launch events, like we were saying. So this is something that comes up for most launches. Like I said, you don't have to launch with a launch event at all, but it can be really helpful. And the reason, like coming back to the original intention behind a launch event, is it's an opportunity for trust building, for question answering, and also for people to kind of experience what it's like in your program, to kind of get a taste of like you as a teacher, or if it's a live program, maybe experience you live, kind of getting into your vibe and checking things out. And so when we kind of come back to the intention of it, like the intention of a launch event is not to manipulate people. It's not to like give them steps 1 and 2, but hoard steps 3 to 10 so that they don't get results and they feel like they need it. Like the intention is to say like, how can I deliver some value to you? How can I show that I'm the right person to take you on this journey? And also, how can I prepare you so that you're ready for this journey? Because often, if we think about where our program starts, sometimes there's a gap between where our program starts and where our people are. So we can ask ourselves, like, do my people need to have anything in place? Like, if they want to join my program around creating their program, do they need to have a topic in mind? Do they need to have an audience built? Do they need to be shifting their limiting beliefs about how possible it is for them to create a program? Do they need to be rethinking how scary tech and launching are? You know, those types of things can be really helpful to think about. How can I use this launch event to help make sure that my people are as prepared as possible for my program? And then once we kind of take that reframe on it, then it really gives us like so much possibility to go like, okay, well then what's the best modality for that? In the sense of like, where do I feel really lit up? So for instance, for me, I love teaching live. I love calls like this. They make me so happy. So it's like, you're not very often going to see me doing a webinar where it's like one-sided and I just like show up and talk to a camera and I don't really get a lot of engagement. It makes me sad. So I was like, whenever I do launches, I like to think about how can I have lots of live time with my people, versus other people, if they're like super introverted and the idea of hosting a live Zoom call stresses you out, then we can think about like, what are our other options? So other ideas for launch, like really like with launch events, like the sky's the limit. You can get super, super creative. So the standard ones that we see webinars, we see kind of like live workshops or live trainings like this one. We see challenges, so like multi-day events with either little live trainings or like a pop-up Facebook group. I've seen people do like email events. So like every single day they send out like a little video and a little thing. So it's a little bit more passive and doesn't require as much face time. Really, it's kind of an invitation for you to get creative with your launch and think about like, how can I have fun with this again? Like, what would be fun? What would like be really high value for my people? Like, what would be just like so awesome? So I'd love to hear kind of when it comes to launch events or anything that I shared so far, if any of you have any questions or anything you'd like to kind of like chat about. Oh, and hi, Chelsea. It's nice to see you. It's popped on here. I know being the first person to speak felt a little scary, but like, go for it. Hi, Finette. I think I muted you. So if you have something, you need to unmute there. Oh, and there you go.
Can you hear me?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so I did arrive late, but I guess like you kind of know my backstory. In my one launch that I did back in November, I feel like I tried to do everything all at once. Like I did the wait list, I did the webinar, I did the like kind of timed bonuses, and it was just exhausting. So I don't even know if this is so much of a question, but more of an intention. In my next launch, I would like to choose maybe like one thing and focus on it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I love that awareness, because I find when it comes to like a successful launch, and I hate like using that word because success means different things for different people. I think there's kind of like two key things. And like one is having a program you're obsessed with, which we'll talk about. But the other one is really managing your energy and being aware of like what gives you energy and what takes your energy. And so I think now, like you said, that you've done all the things. On one hand, you're going to have a lot of that infrastructure built. Like you can probably run like similar emails and similar things, because a lot of the time that is part of the exhaustion. Is not only are we creating our programs, so we're building our modules and recording our videos, but then we have to like write the posts and write the emails and write the sales page and all that. So it's a lot of output. So for the next launch, I think maybe, you know, always treating it with like an air of like experimentation, to be like, okay, which parts were the most fun, or which parts did people latch on to the most? And so something that like my fiance always says to me whenever I'm like stressing is, he's like, low prep, high engagement. What gets you the most engagement but takes the least amount of prep? And so that can be something that can be like a really helpful kind of like guiding part, to be like, okay, where did my people latch on the most? Was it on the webinar, or was it from the wait list, or was it from one particular email that I sent? Or where did I feel like I showed up the best? And then kind of like adding fuel to that fire and giving yourself permission to kind of like strip off some of the other things, I think is totally fine. You definitely don't have to do all the things.
Okay.
How does that feel?
It feels good. I definitely agree. And I'm curious, I think I heard you say an option could be like, rather than doing a webinar, like dripping out videos every day over the course of like, I don't know how many days.
Yeah.
What would that look? Is that something you already talked about?
No, we can definitely talk about it. And for those of you who did hop on later, I'm totally happy to repeat things. So don't worry about that at all. I love that idea. I think it can be really fun. I even think for you, Chelsea, I could see you putting a mini course in your course platform, and then they can like go through it at their own pace. And then maybe there's like an email sequence that like drips out at the same time. But because the one is pretty much self-study, like I know you did those kind of bonus coaching questions, I think the more that you can mimic that with like this free resource, it will set you up really nicely for an evergreen funnel, which I think could be really like fun to play with.
You said the more that you can mimic that. What do you mean by that?
Like the more you can mimic the experience of the program you're selling with your launch event. So like in general, I don't really recommend having a launch event that has a ton of live coaching if your program doesn't have live coaching, because then people are like, wow, you're amazing. This is so great. I love all your feedback. And then you're like, great, get my program where you have no access to me. Versus if you can build that trust to be like, okay, in my pre-recorded materials, in, you know, because I know you were even saying on your coaching call, most of them didn't have any questions because your materials were so comprehensive. So I think like showcasing that, like in either whether it's dripping out like an email with a little video each day, or being like, here's a free mini course, check it out. I think either of those options, whichever one feels fun, could be a really great way to like mimic the experience they get in the one. And then maybe during like an active promotion period, just have like 1 or 2 pop-up Q&A calls.
Cool. With a mini course, what do you recommend that looks like? Like, would that be like, would you extract part of the course, or would it be like a mini overview of the basics, or would it depend?
It totally depends. So like one of the things you can do is like thinking about like, again, is there anything that my people need to have in place to be ready for this program that I'm selling? So then your mini course can really kind of walk them through that. So like, for instance, I'm going to be releasing some new lead magnets hopefully in the next month, but let's be real, it's gonna be longer than that because I'm always behind. And I'm doing mini courses, and the 2 mini courses, one is for people who don't have a program, and one is for people who have a program, they want to make it better. And they're both kind of like, start here. Because what I hear from my people is they're like, I have an idea and I have no idea where to start. So could someone just walk me through that? So my courses, like my little mini courses, are going to be like, here's an overview of how to start. Here's like a couple things to get you started. Here's an exercise. Here's some quick tips if you want to continue. Here's your logical next step. So on one hand, you can do something like that kind of prepares them for the journey. Or on the other hand, if you feel like there's like a lesson or a module from the one that's like really juicy, then you could also be like, test out a free module from my course, or like test out this free lesson. You know, I think we've seen Shannon does that, you know, and has had success with that.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Such great questions. I'm just going back up here because I feel like I saw some other questions here. Finette, you said, do I think a launch cannot be exhausting, or is that just part of the deal? Such a great question. Yes, I think it can. I think there is a way to have a launch not be exhausting. And I think that we need to be really intentional about how we set ourselves up for success. So I really think that it is totally possible to tell yourself, like, how do I want to feel during this launch, and what needs to happen in order to feel that way? And then asking yourself, like, which part of launching feel the most exhausting? And often for some people, it's the showing up, the like having to show up and talk about it. You know, you talk about it for a day or two, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't talk about this anymore. So even for me, like, I'm very extroverted. Like I don't have any problem showing up on video. And I find launching, like, I do burnout as well. And so one of the things that I find really helps me is to think, like, how can I pre-make stuff so when I need to like recharge, it's still showing up. So for instance, like, I really like pre-making, if you're an Instagram user, like story series where people can like, you know, hey, I've got something for you, and then they click through and it adds on. Things like that, where it adds that conversational element or adds that promotional element, but then you can give yourself downtime. One of the biggest things that I see like contributing to kind of like launch fatigue is usually when we don't give ourselves enough of a window of all the pieces we have to create: the sales emails, the sales page, the sales content, the course content, the this, the that, or the other. And then we're still building that, or we're tapped out from building that, and now we have to show up and talk about it. So a lot of it is that energy management, to say, like, if you know you're the type of person that like creative output is really draining for you in that sense, then maybe giving yourself a couple weeks buffer between when that stuff is created and when you actually launch, so that you can like recharge, or see, like, can I take stuff off my plate? Like I know, and then recognize this kind of depends on your own like other things going on in your life and like your financial capabilities. But I know one of my friends, she gets like meal prepped sent to her for her launch week. So it's like she doesn't have to cook, but there's like food in the fridge. Or, you know, she books herself in, like another person I know like always goes like for a massage in the middle of her launch week, or like anything like that, where you can have like some cup refilling activities while some other things kind of tick out for you, like, you know, having like your emails pre-scheduled and rolling or whatever, so that you can really see like what feels draining and what doesn't. How does all that feel for you, Finette? Does anything stand out? Or
It does. My main issue, I think, with the launches is that I sit down like 3 months in advance and I plan, but then it's so far in advance that it's actually not scheduled. And then as I get closer, I'm like, oh, I have time. Oh, I have time. Oh, I have time. Ah, I don't have time anymore. And then it's just like,
yeah.
I don't know why. It's just,
I'm so much the same. I mean, I'm experiencing that right now. Like, I can just be like really transparent. I have been planning on launching this new round of the incubator since November. And cart was supposed to open today. It's not going to. It's going to open tomorrow or Wednesday. And I don't have a sales page. I don't have my launch emails written. Like, I am behind. So I just want to let you know that, like, we're all human and, like, we're all, like, doing the best we can. And I think that, like, and I wonder, Finette, if you're this way, whenever I, like, schedule things too far in advance, one, I am so deadline driven that if that deadline is not in like 3 days, I have a really hard time caring about it. And also, I find I'm very responsive in how I create my content. So if I am like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write my sales sequence, and then I'm like, I have no ideas. And then I'll have a conversation with someone and I'll be like, oh, I want to share this, I want to share that, or whatever. So sometimes it can be nice, like, to create like a habit of like creating like almost like sales or launch content, even if you have no launch on the horizon. We're like, oh, my people need to hear this, or oh, they need to hear that. So that you're almost building a library that when it comes time to be like putting together launch emails or something like that, you can kind of pull from it. So it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm waiting to respond, I'm waiting for a deadline, I have 3 days, and now I'm still creating stuff. And because I'm so tired from creating stuff, I'm too tired to actually like talk about my thing.
Like having a library in Notion, for example.
Oh yeah, I mean, that could be an idea.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, I know I have like just a notes app on my phone that anytime something inspires me, I write the first half of it. And so that's, you know, if you're on my mailing list, which I'm assuming you all are, some of the emails you're going to be getting over the next week or so are going to be things that I call it cosmic love. Like, it's just like love that I have for my people that I just want to like share with them, that I've been cultivating, that I'm like, okay, now these are the things that my people like need to hear. So a lot of it is that energy management. And also a lot of it is like giving yourself permission to do things in a way that might feel like counterculture to what launching has to look like. Because often what I see is it's like, oh, like, can I launch without a webinar? Can I have a course without slides? Can I, you know, do this thing without this? And the kind of unspoken part of that sentence is, and still be successful, and still have the launch that I want to have, and still have people enroll. And so if we trust that we're like, the right people are going to find my program, the right people are going to sign up when I show up like in authenticity, and when I show up managing my energy and I give them the information that they need, it can take a lot of that pressure off to be like, oh, right, like I don't have to have all the bells and whistles. You know, like I have a mentor who has like literally runs 7-figure company, has like 100K months, and she doesn't do any of this fancy stuff, like no email funnels, no beautifully pictured webinars. So really like giving us permission to be like, okay, what feels fun, what feels easy, and how can I strip away the rest can be really, really impactful. Thank you. Okay, so I know Erica, you had a question, and then Daniela, you had a question. So Erica, let's start with you.
Yeah, so we started at the very beginning of this call talking about like personal branding versus company branding. So I'm changing my whole brand from Art of the Resume to ericaclicks.com, and I'm writing the website. We're also working on this course together, and my hope is to launch the website by like first week in March, and I really think I can do it. And I'm curious if if you think it would be worthwhile to launch the course and the website at the same time, or capitalize on two different things, or or if it should or if it would just be too much and I'm just a crazy person and that's not what I should be doing.
No, definitely not too much at all. Like, I love that idea. So I feel like you have kind of like two different options. And I know like the program we're designing, it's like lower ticket. So you might like not need to do this. But I always say like website launches are a great opportunity to have people looking at something in particular. Cause like, you know, there's people who are like kind of snoopy. So they'll like click around, but then they'll be like, okay, cool. And then like move on. Versus if it's like, there's a website and now it's all pointing to this thing. So whether it's like all pointing to this new course because it's like all over the place, or the website launch is like pointing to your launch event. Like if you were planning on doing like a workshop or something, I would pick one of the two to point it to. And then so it's like you can like layer your launch, and either it's like website launch and launch event, which then prepares people for the course, or website launch and like as part of that, check out the sweet new resource I have.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I was thinking, was like at least pointing them to like, you know, new fresh ways of finding the lead magnet, new ways to like get in, or what, you know, whatever that launch event is, which I have lots of ideas about, but
We'll talk about that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love that idea of it being like to the lead magnet / launch event / I mean, your course is going to be evergreen. So it's probably more like a lead magnet.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm trying. Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Just, I think with that one, like the only thing I would caution is just making sure you give yourself lots of breathing room, because it's a lot of output, you know, like new website content, new lead magnet, new sales emails, like all that stuff. And that tends to be, you know, the most draining part for people, is like all the output and all the setup. Yeah. Okay. So, and Daniela, you had a question.
Yes. I'm here. I'm already speaking over you. It kind of leads on from that question well. So I was going to say or ask, how do you feel about evergreen launches that kind of iterate as they go along? So like with sales copy bonuses that shift relatively silently in the background versus a big, I don't know, palaver, like I'm using English words, but like a big fuss you make about opening and closing the cart. Do you see what I mean? Like, so with a lead magnet, maybe the lead magnet like shifts and changes in an unnoticeable way, or do you think it's best to draw attention and have these opening and closing points?
So I think it depends on why things are shifting. So if it's shifting because like, you know, like people aren't responding to it, like, oh, people aren't responding to the messaging, or people aren't signing up, or like, you know, you're kind of essentially like tracking your analytics and then like shifting as you go, then I think that can be kind of like subtle, because I think we all do that. Like that's just kind of ongoing. If it's shifting because you're like, okay, this lead magnet's no longer going to be available, or like this bonus is no longer going to be available, something where it's like I'm removing it, or it's changing like radically enough that people might want it as it exists in its current form, then I think letting people know, like I'm a big fan of just like transparency, like through the whole process. So to be able to say like, you know, if it's like a little micro change, like you don't have to tell people like we're changing the wording on our landing page because
The font has
opt
changed.
in. Yeah, you know, like we don't have to do that. But if it's like, oh hey, like, you know, we're actually retiring this lead magnet, we're releasing this one instead, then it kind of gives people that opportunity to like grab what they want.
The reason I ask is off the back of what you just said of like starting paralysis and just go with it. Like one of my favorite quotes is, you can't drive a parked car, or you can't, you know, like you have to start going and then you continue from there. So I mean, in the sense of I've taken too long launching this already because it's still only an idea in my head. I'm tempted off of the back of what you're talking about today to just put something up there and iterate. And are there any fallbacks that I might not be seeing? Like, could it be seen as flaky or unfinished, or, you know, because I have a tendency to go, I'm a virtual assistant as well. So I'm used to helping people make things like polished and finesse things. But when it comes to my own work, I could finesse it until the end of time and it's not actually going to change the output or the input from somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. Well, I love that awareness. And I think it's definitely better just to get something out there and change, because like you just don't know until how people are engaging with it. Like I remember like when I first kind of came into the online space, the things that I thought people needed and how I talked about stuff was like, it was so corporate. It was so corporate. None of you would want to be on a call with me. It was not helpful at all. And I didn't know that until I started engaging with people, and thankfully I had a couple of friends that were like, yeah, Emily, like we need to shift how you do this, you know, and you just don't know that until you start taking action. So something that like I have a colleague who uses is like, what's your Getmo? Like you're good enough to move on. And I kind of like that better than minimum viable product, because sometimes like minimum viable product can feel like, oh, I'm putting in the bare minimum. And like if we care about our people and we want things to look really good. Yeah. Opposed to just like, okay, it's good enough and I can change this later. So like for instance, with a new round of the incubator that I'm opening this week, I'm in the process of migrating course platforms. So right now everything is self-hosted on my website, and I'm moving to Learn Plus. And I love having welcome videos in all of my courses. And I was like, I don't have time to record a welcome video for this new version of the incubator. I wish I did, but I don't. And so I'm like, you know what? People are going to be just fine with text and a welcome PDF, and I can add a video later. You know, so it's kind of asking yourself, like, what is good enough for me versus like, and what can I change later versus like, what is, no, I cannot launch without this thing, you know, or I can't release it looking this way. And that's very individual, right? So it's like trying to be able to find what feels good. But I know something that kind of like propelled me, like when I was doing like my master's thesis, was the concept of like, there's no such thing as good writing, there's only good editing. And that can be really helpful. It's like, who said it? Someone famous said it, that like,
yeah, that
if you're
is
not,
a famous, yeah.
and I was going to say, like, if you're not a little bit embarrassed by the first version of something you released, you probably waited too long. And so kind of just getting it out there, I think, is so important.
So to reference quickly back to the first question I had, because I've asked a couple. So in terms of like reopening and closing the cart, would you use the moments where you feel proudest to highlight them, or is it really just the Getmo, Daniela, get it up and move on with your life? If you see what I'm saying.
I think it's both. Like, I think if you're feeling like, I think also something that can be really helpful too is like, if you're feeling kind of stuck in that paralysis, it's almost like giving yourself permission to throw all the structure out the window. And instead of feeling like, oh, I'm not in a launch period, or I am in a launch period, or I'm doing this or doing that, just being like, no, it's 2 a.m. and I feel like talking about this offer, I'm going to talk about it. Or like, just like almost like stop bottlenecking ourselves of our like output. Like, I know for me, like, I don't know what it is, but it's always like 1 a.m. that I feel like promoting my offers. And so like and I'm like, instead of making myself wrong, just being like, okay, that's where the energy is flowing right now. And we can always kind of start to harness it and put it into a structure later. But in the beginning, I think just like getting it out there when it feels like it's ready to be out there.
I think it's coming from the fact that when you're so used to being someone's assistant, like that is my history, like almost a decade in sales and marketing, and then theater, and then production companies, that when I'm ever try and start my own thing, I know what the end result should look like because I'm used to being part of the team that puts it together. But when I'm on my own, there's no way I can like do the job of 5 me's, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
okay.
Like cutting yourself some slack.
Yeah, I needed to hear it. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome. Well, I'm totally fine to go over time today, so I don't feel like we're going to kick you all out because it's top of the hour here. So I would just love to hear like what other questions you have, and it can be about what we talked about for launching or course design or anything. Oh, Finette, you have a question? Yeah.
Yes, so I had like yet another epiphany this weekend, and I'm like looking at my calendar and seeing everything that is planned in my life for the next 6 months. I'm like, you know what, I really want to launch these courses, but it's just, I don't think it's in the cards for now. So I'm tabling my courses for now, but I'm like, I already have a course that is out there, and it was a group coaching program, and I can't launch right now because I don't have the time to do the coaching. But I know I have a ton of templates and email swipes in there, and a lot of stuff like that I'm really good at putting together. And so I've decided to do something I've been wanting to do for a long time, which is do a shop with like a template shop, which is really the low-hanging fruit for me right now, because it's like it's something that my VAs can do for me and I don't have to worry about it. It's going to be done. But what kind of launch would you do? Would you even do a launch event for something like that, or would you reserve the launch events to like courses and stuff, or is that not even worth making an event out of it?
So I think it kind of comes down to like, how can you educate your people in the sense and like create this celebration? Because if you're really excited about the templates, like I could see, not being at like a formal structured launch event, but maybe just to like look at how I set this up, or like here's how I put this into a workflow, or like let me take you, like I just realized this day I was doing a call for the current incubator students, and they were like obsessed with behind the scenes things. Like it was like I wasn't expecting it to be something that they're really interested in, but I know like I think Nikki's on this call and she was like, this is so great, I love seeing this. So even being like, here's how I set this up, and here's how you use this, and here's how this works, I think that's something that people are really curious in. So I think again it comes down to that, like if there were no rules and I knew whatever I chose would be successful, like how would I do it? Like what would feel fun to be like, oh my goodness, I have this amazing template shop. And I think especially for your people, because there is, there are other photographers out there with templates, how can you show like what makes yours special or what makes yours unique, or like where they could use one, where it saves their time, kind of addressing those like yeah buts, like, oh yeah, but I don't need this template, or yeah, but I could do this or that instead, being like, how can I through my content or through some sort of live event like showcase the difference there.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, and Danielle, I love what you said there about like often like the process is what sets apart. So I could even see like if you picked like one tiny little part of the process and you teach and be like, here's the templates that help along the way. I could see that being super cool. Such great questions, everyone. What other questions do you have for me? Doesn't have to be about launching. It can be about like program design, or we talked about tech last week. Any way that I can help you. Or if you're feeling good, you can just use the little like reaction feature and like give me like a little like heart or a thumbs up or something if you're feeling good. Get some hearts. Awesome. Daniela's thinking. Okay, well, while you're thinking, if you have any more questions, like feel free to interrupt me, but I'll let you know we have kind of one more cafe in the series that I've been doing. So on Wednesday, it's the behind the scenes cafe. And that's where I'm gonna take you behind the scenes of everything I've been working on. So you can kind of see, I'm gonna walk through how I designed this new version of the incubator. I'm gonna show you kind of how I structured it, how it's set up in Learn Plus, you know, kind of all the fun things, like what I do when I'm thinking about how I put programs together, and then also what I did when I was managing this launch, which was supposed to go completely differently, and, and I fell behind and all those things. So just kind of sharing with you like the human side of it all as well. So it's gonna be super fun. I'm really excited to show you what I've been building with the incubator, because it's beautiful. Like I honestly think this is the most like visually beautiful program I've ever done. So I'm really excited to like showcase all the fun things. So that's gonna be on Wednesday, gonna be at noon. You'll get the email reminders about it as well. And there'll be a replay if you can't make it as well. Oh, and Danielle, you have a question. Yes.
This is an easy one for you. And as you're talking about the incubator, so obviously you know that I've connected with you through Jordan, but in case you didn't know, I knew very little about you before we connected on that call. So just looking at your website at the moment, because I'm multitasking, what if I was interested in just getting more of what you have to talk about? I know like Jordan has mentioned these too many times and I've never popped in on one. So is this coming to a close? And then is that what you're referring to? And then from there, is it like a course or a direct contact with you, or like where's your starting point if I'm not familiar with your work?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely you can kind of go through, like I have like blog posts with lots of great resources on there. Instagram is where I hang out. So like that's where I show up the most often. So if you just want to kind of like get my free content or like slide into my DMs with questions, send me pictures of your pets, like I'm into all of that. And then I am going to be hosting course cafes like this every month. I was doing kind of a bunch in a series to kind of celebrate the upcoming launch of the incubator, but I am going to be doing these free cafes every month, and each one, I think the next one is going to be around like engagement and kind of loving on your people. It's probably going to be on Valentine's Day. So I was like, love your people. And then
that's coming up.
Yeah. And then at some point I'm going to do one on like gamification. So there'll be all sorts of fun topics coming up. That's a great place to start. And then I have a whole bunch of different paid opportunities to work with me. So if you have questions about getting support with things like that, you can send me a DM on Instagram and we can chat about what might be the best fit.
Okay, great. Instagram sounds like the place to be. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Oh, Erica, you're so sweet. Thank you. Okay, Erica, you have questions as well.
I do. It's one thing, and we can also always talk about this in our session, but I was thinking about, from when it comes to launching, my program is going to be a self-serve course. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and I'm wondering if you could see a bonus for launching as being like a mini strategy session on top for one-on-one work, to be able to like help figure out where people's questions actually are, like where are they missing, as well as like getting like just to get more feedback as part of the live rather than the live experience, so that I can put it back in the course later on. I don't know, that's something I was like, just as we're talking about things that would be fun, I do like talking to people, and I also want to make my course better. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I love the idea of doing like 1 or 2 group coaching calls, like group, definitely not one-to-one. So because the whole idea is like we're adding in scalable, so we don't want to add more onto your time.
But just the launch, just like for the one. Okay, fine.
I hear you. And like Chelsea can actually speak to this, because this is the model that she did, where it's a self-study course, but then do you have multiple group coaching calls or just one, Chelsea? Two. Okay. And so that's a great way to kind of like test out the curriculum, see if people have certain questions, see if like we've missed anything, but it's still scalable. only 2 calls on your calendar. Because I mean, again, like we're going for volume here, especially because it's a slightly lower ticket offer. So wherever possible, I don't recommend offering one-to-one things as bonuses. With the exception, like sometimes what I do for my higher ticket programs, like with the incubator, I offer Voxer access as like a bonus. Because in general, the volume of questions that come through Voxer access tends to be less than, and it doesn't take time on my calendar to have like a 1-hour call, for instance. So wherever possible, I recommend not doing one-to-one bonuses.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Jennifer said, like, unless you limit it to like X number of people to like, you know, but yeah, you could get bombarded. Yeah, I love that. Amazing. Any other questions before we wrap up for today? Yeah, Chelsea.
I'm curious about like a strategy for a launch, kind of like these group calls that you're doing. I'm not referring to like, this isn't a question for the one, it's more so a question for my upcoming one-on-one mentorship launch. I love the idea of holding like a series of group calls, whether that be, you know, every week for 4 weeks, or maybe like it's a condensed week where there's a call every day that you can attend. I'm curious, like, if that was your launch strategy, at what point in the calendar you would want to do that?
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen this done a couple of ways. So I just want to share like a couple different options. One that I just saw a coach do is she did like a weekend intensive, like 3-hour group workshop, and it was paid. And so it wasn't like, it was like this is going to be lots of hot seat coaching and we're going to dive into, they were getting like a little bit more investment. And especially if, you know, your one-to-one work is like a higher ticket price point, sometimes having like a paid launch event could be really good. So I'm thinking like, you know, if you have like, you know, 30 or 60 days of like really good pre-launch content around like mentorship and why it's so important and why you're so amazing. And then you have this kind of like paid 1 day, more extended, intimate. So you're getting like a smaller group of people, but they're probably a lot warmer because they're already willing to pay you and they're willing to be in there. That's kind of one way of doing things. Or if you wanted to go kind of the more free route where they can like kind of test things out, then I would say sometime within like a month to 2 weeks before when you're going to be like actively promoting it. Because the reason we put the launch event kind of right before the cart opens is because this is where we're getting like the warmest, like it's the connection point. It's where people are like really starting to make their decisions. And so we're kind of top of mind for them. So I think for you, I would either lean towards like the one paid weekend intensive type of thing, or once a week for a couple of weeks in a row. Something that I have, I noticed just from like my own audience is that I got way more traction when there was a topic than when I was just like, show up and talk to me on the course cafe, which is how I used to do things. I was like Q&As, and I would have some people show up. Most of them were already my paid clients. They were just like, I just want more time to hang out with you. And I was like, awesome, this is great. But for new people, I realized it felt really scary, the idea of like coming onto a Zoom call with someone I'd never talked to before. And I think we're all always braced for the sales pitch. So we're like, no, they can't be actually asking that value. They're not that nice. And I'm like, no, I actually am that nice. Like, I just like hanging out with people. Like, let's do it. So I think if you are doing it, then the intentionality and the structure of it needs to be more transparent in the sense of like, you know, come to this one and we're going to talk specifically about pricing your offers, or come to this one and we're going to talk specifically about this thing, or come to this one and it's going to be like hot seat coaching or whatever, so that people kind of know what to expect. Because I think the kind of just show up and chat model is a bit newer. People are really used to structured webinars where they can just kind of like hide and not have to have any engagement. So thinking about how you can make it introvert friendly while also making it welcoming for everyone.
I definitely like the idea of having a topic. That said, do you think it's better to come prepared, like not webinar style, but like with notes that you're going to teach at the top of the, like, or I obviously wasn't here at the beginning, so I don't know exactly how you ran it. But how much should I bring to it versus open Q&A?
Yeah, so what I've been doing is I've been preparing like like a page of notes. And like, so for this one, I can't remember where you hopped in, but I kind of broke it into little sections. Like I was like, okay, we're going to talk about like the types of launches. Now here, let's have some questions. Now we're going to talk about components of launches. Now let's have some questions. So I never advocate for talking for like 20 or 30 minutes straight. Like this is just kind of like a learning design thing for everyone in general. Like after about 15 minutes of direct instruction, like your brain is not actually absorbing anything. So it is so much better for engagement, even on a live call, to like teach for like 5 or 6 minutes and then have some Q&A engagement time, teach again. So you could just kind of prepare some little like bits and pieces, but then like let people know there's going to be lots of hot seat time and that type of thing. And you could also just like survey your audience too, because I know your audience is really engaged with you, just to see kind of like what people like grab onto, to be like, oh, I love this, or I want this. Or, you know, you could say like, if I offered a free Q&A where you could just show up and ask me anything, would you be into that? Or would you rather like micro training, that type of thing?
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
For the more like, you mentioned like a day, like a half day intensive,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be something that is paid potentially. Within that, would you recommend that that be like one very specific topic with a very specific result? Or from a learning design perspective, I suppose, would it make sense to be looking at more than one topic inside of that like intensive?
Yeah. So, oh, Finette, do you have to go? Okay. Bye. Thanks. So how I saw this coach did it. So this coach charges a lot of money. I think she's like, I want to say she's close to like 100K for the year. Like she's a very expensive coach to work with. And so the way she framed it was just like, for those of you who are like thinking about wanting to work with me, or like you want to experience working with me, but you can't invest in me yet, like, would you be open to this? Or like, would you be curious about this? I'm thinking it would be this price point. We'd spend half a day together. There'd be like hot seat coaching. And hers was like it wasn't really like a specific result. It was more just like, do you want to get some coaching from me? And do you want to kind of like see what it's like without the huge price tag associated with it? So I think, I haven't personally tried that before, but it could be like something that you could experiment with, to be like, oh, if you've been thinking about getting mentorship with me, or you just kind of want to taste it and it's like at a way lower price commitment, then you could try something like that. Or you could go like the workshop route of like very specific output. I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel like because it is for mentoring, I feel like maybe the mentoring experience, like having it be like a mini experience of what it's like to work with you one-on-one, might convert better, because it's like, you don't work with a really structured curriculum with your students or with your mentees. What do you think?
I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And then I think like from a sales perspective, like, I wonder if it would make it harder because I lose the ability to articulate like, this is the topic, this is the result. I feel like maybe the answer lies somewhere between. Like, it is structured, but not so much that I'm like, okay, slides, this is what we're like, it might be like, for the first half, we're going to generally talk about this. Then the second half, we generally talk about whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea of like finding like a midway point. And I can also even see like, if you're open to trying it as an experiment, like even just like current, like I'm thinking of doing this, like if you want to sign up, like DM me or whatever, and just kind of like checking like feelers. So it's, instead of feeling like you need to have a structured sales page and a structured this, that, or the other, but just being like, I'm going to try this. What do you think? And seeing where people lean in. Sometimes just having that kind of like playful energy can be really liberating, to be like, oh, I don't need to have the email sequence and the sales page and this, that, or the other. Like I remember one time, I just was really close to hitting like a financial milestone in my business. And I was like, oh my God, I just need to make $200 more like today. Like, how do I do this? So I was just like, all right, I'm going to have this workshop. It's going to cost $97. If you're into it, let me know. No sales page, no emails, no nothing. People DM me and I just sent them a PayPal link. Like it was the most like lean thing, because I was just so close. So sometimes just like playing with that can be really fun. And then just sitting and being like, okay, what does your nervous system need? Like if your nervous system needs some structure, then give it some structure. If that starts to feel constricting, then like, how can you kind of play in something a little bit more open?
Awesome.
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you. Okay, Jennifer, did you have a question? I see there's a conversation going on in the chat. Just kind of jumping up here. Did you want to unmute and chat about it, or do you want to stay in the chat? Either way.
I can unmute. Hopefully it's working today.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Awesome. I don't have my headset in, so you'll probably hear one of my cats screaming. I apologize. So I do WordPress websites, and I want to have a course for those who maybe can't afford to have somebody do it, or they're like me. They're like, no, that's my baby. I'm going to DIY it. But I also have somebody that's really highlighted, I don't deal well with people who won't try because they're so scared of the technology. They're afraid they're going to blow something up that they just get in fear. So I was thinking doing like my first launch to be like a workshop where I work with, I take you click by click through the super basics, just getting started. A little bit of design, what kind of pages you need, some of that. Having that recorded as a lead magnet, and then selling the next step up on that workshop.
I love that idea. I think there's a lot of power in realizing, like you said, it's like one of the biggest blocks that your people are having is the like, oh, I'm going to break something. Like I could almost see you calling the workshop like something really cheeky, like it's not going to break, or like we're not going to break it, or like something that almost like speaks to that like really innate fear that they're having, but then shows the trust of you're like, I'm going to lead you through this. Like it's okay. Like I've got you. So like I think that something like that is really, really powerful. And whenever we're thinking of designing like our launch event or lead magnet or whatever it is, asking ourselves like, what are the major blocks or limitations our people are experiencing that are going to stop them from even engaging with our program? So if it's like fear of the tech, is it overwhelm? Is it not knowing where to start? Is it like telling themselves they're like, oh, I can't do this, who am I to do this? Like whatever it may be, if we can use our pre-launch content or like our launch event to shift that, that's really where we see those powerful conversions into our program. So I love that awareness that you have, Jennifer.
And I can totally see myself having, it's not going to break, or we're not going to break it, or you can't break it in the title. I love cheese, literally and figuratively. I love cheese.
Cheese is the best. I have a cousin who doesn't like cheese. Like it's not that she can't eat it, she just doesn't like cheese. And I'm like, I don't know how we're related. Like I don't understand. Okay, thank you. That's such a great question. And then Jordan says like it could be like a tagline or some sort of marketing motto or like something like that. Yeah. But I think sometimes just like calling out like the biggest like thing that they're thinking, like whether it's like a fear or an objection or like a myth that they're believing or something like that, there can be a lot of power in like just saying what's on their mind. And then that shows that you get them, you understand them, but it also helps you kind of shift it, because if they're afraid of that, then they're not going to want to sign up for a course where they're like, I might break everything. So many great questions today. Before we wrap up, do we have any other last questions or anything else I can help all of you with before we kind of call it a day on the Launch Cafe?
I have a last one. I started not because I started and I want to finish, just because I've been listening closely. How do you balance? So I'm coming off the back of this being like, okay, I know I'm going to brand myself, like front facing and not hide behind a company unless it's the production company, etc. And I know that I'm going to keep working for Jordan as a VA, and I'm going to hire out my services more in that direction. How do you balance your time between the stuff that pays you currently and the stuff you would really like to pay you in the future? And that's nothing to say that I don't enjoy work. Jordan knows that it's nothing to say that I don't enjoy working for Civilized Animal Productions, but I have dreams as well, like of my own. So how do you balance that? Like weekends or?
Oh, it's such a great question. And so I know like when I first started building my own business, I worked part-time at the local university because I was like, that's going to pay my bills while I build up my client base. And I found what really helped was like having like protecting time, in the sense of like whatever time I could protect. So whether it's like, okay, Saturdays are my day for this, or like 1 hour each night, some people work better in a batch, or some people work better like a little bit each day, where it has to be like almost like a sacred boundary, where it's like, I'm not scheduling over this, because holding boundaries with ourselves is like the hardest thing. And so really for me, it had to be the like, okay, I need to hold this time sacred so that I can really make progress forward on the goals and the things that I'm working on. And so it might mean having to say no. It might mean like having to like, you know, prioritize and choose things. It can be like really challenging. But I would say like picking either like a little bit of time each day or like a chunk of time each week, whether it's like an afternoon or a morning or a weekend or like, you know, whatever feels manageable to you.
So like, to be clear, when you were working the side job, as it were, did you, this is going to sound so stupid coming from someone who should know the answer to this question, but maybe I need you to need to hear you say it. Did you prioritize like making sure all of your expenses were covered and that there was no risk, or did you dip into a, you know what I mean? Like I can work on the Saturday for someone who's going to pay me on the Saturday, or I can take a risk and use the Saturday once a week to build something going forward. Like I'm struggling with risk aversion at the moment. So I don't know which way I'm leaning at all. I know what my gut says, but I would like to know what you would say.
Yeah. So I'll tell you kind of a little bit about like what my journey looked like. So I worked part-time at the university and I worked mornings. So Monday to Friday, it was like Tuesday to Saturday for a while. And then I shifted roles and it was Monday to Friday. And I worked from about like 7:30 to 1:30. And then I would come home and I would like work on my business or I would work with clients. You know, I was kind of doing some corporate contracting at the
like
same time as I was like, I was like double working. So it meant I was kind of working all the time. So there was definitely some like sacrifice on sleeping.
I've done
but my university job covered my basics and pretty much nothing more. Like I was like, I can pay rent and I can eat and everything else is, you know, on top of that. And I'd always told myself, I was like, I'm going to leave my university job. I'm going to take the leap and go full time when I am like booked out like 3 months in advance with clients so that I can like feel confident. And I remember the year that I took the leap. So it was like in January, let's see here. My contract ended at the university, or was up for renewal end of September. And I had to let them know kind of around May. And that whole year I was like booked solid. I was like inviting all the clients. And I was like, this is great. This is amazing, whatever. And I told the university, I was like, this is great. I'm done. Bye forever. I hate this job. I didn't tell them that, but I was feeling it energetically. And then I think it was about June, all my clients disappeared. It just like, I don't know what happened.
I'm so glad you got to that part in the story, because I was just about to say, I've done everything you're describing, and then I hit a period of absolute catastrophe, and I'm hoping you can relate to me otherwise.
I can very much relate. So I think it was like June, July, August, September. I barely had any clients in my own business, but I had already told the university, I was like, no thanks, I don't need this contract.
Same pain.
And I remember talking to my fiance and I was just like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, do I need to go back and beg for my job? And he's like, you know, you've been wanting to run your own business, you've been wanting to do this. He's like, give yourself some time to like bet on yourself. So when I actually took the leap to be full-time in my business, I had no income coming in. And so it definitely lit a fire under my ass to find it and do it. And so I want to say there was like that, like my friend Kate calls it the McDonald's moment, where you're like, it's all caving in on you and you're like, I'm going to go have to work at McDonald's and like flip burgers because like I'm not getting clients or anything like that. But there was something about it that was like, okay, like I can do this. And I remember even because when I was in that kind of like pit of like desperation of like, oh my God, I need clients. I was doing all of the things. And like, I'm really, really lucky that my partner said to me, like, he said two different things that had very different energies behind them. And one was, he was like, well, if you were already showing up as like your CEO self, like which strategies of these would you be doing? And I was like, oh, like half of these I would not be doing. And then he said to me, which my Leo self did not appreciate, he went, I just want to let you know, I have no expectation that you make any money in your business for a year.
Oh, you and see, I would love that.
he meant it from this place of love, just like, you know, no pressure and it's fine and we'll make it work. We have savings. And I was like, excuse me?
Yes,
like, I'm gonna make money, blah, blah, blah. So I thrive really well when someone tells me I can't do things. And so then I had to turn around and
you're speaking to an Aries. We share that energy.
Fire sign. You know, so on one hand, I was very lucky and I love him so much. And I knew it came from this place of love. And on the other hand, I was like, screw you, like not going to make any money. I was like, I'm going to hit 6 figures in my first year in business. And I did. And so I think there is like, I totally understand the risk aversion. And also kind of, I think it's honoring your,
paralyzing.
it's
Yeah.
paralyzing, and honoring your nervous system in the sense of like, what do you need? And maybe it's starting with like, okay, my bases are covered and I can do this. And then maybe I can drop it down a little bit where my bases aren't fully covered.
Yeah,
I
think what I'm hearing is like, don't wait. And I have a tendency, or I have a family who would like me to have a tendency to wait until I'm super comfy. So like get comfy, settle into the 9 to 5, settle into the side hustle, settle it, you know, and then you can't jump from nothing. Like there's no momentum. So I don't know what trampoline I'm then gonna like hop on. And so yeah, okay, I won't. I hear you. Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's that whole balance of things. So yeah, that's such a great question though, and I think it's so great for us all to like kind of like hear each other's stories and like hear that it's not all like rainbows and kittens all the time. Like I've definitely had like lots of moments of the like crying on the couch being like, oh my god, like everything's caving in and like how am I even going to do this, and like so just knowing that it's like those, it's almost like knowing that those moments are inevitable, like, but that trusting your ability to hold yourself through it, and knowing that it's like, you know what, like you're so strong and you're so resilient and you're so capable that, you know, it took me a really long time to like learn that message, and I'm still integrating it. Like I'm not saying I've fully gotten it. I definitely haven't. Of being like, oh, like if there is a low moment, I can handle it and I can pull myself out of it. And like if it does dip or if there is a risk, I can do this. And so there's like that kind of like internal messaging that can be really, really powerful. Yay, thank you. Oh, this was so great. Well, just thank you so much, everyone. I just really appreciate how much you showed up and the great questions that you had. And I hope to see you all at the Behind the Scenes Cafe on Wednesday, but if you can't come, that's also okay. Any other last questions or comments I can help you with before we wrap up? Feeling good. Danielle will be there on Wednesday. Yeah. Oh, Jennifer, I love that. You're like, yeah, it goes both ways, like being a cheerleader and also having your partner be the cheerleader without ever being a cheerleader in real life. Yeah, I was a band kid. I was not a cheerleader. My school actually didn't allow us to have cheerleaders. They were worried it would be too cliquey. Okay, well, this is so great. Well, thank you all so much, everyone. This was absolutely wonderful. I hope to see you on Wednesday. Oh yeah, got band kids, theater kids, math team. I love it. If you think of other questions and you can't come on Wednesday, feel free to message me on Instagram. You're already on my mailing list. So like I said, there's going to be more course cafes, and I'm just so excited about all the amazing things that you're working on. So we'll chat to you soon, and I hope you all have a great day. So bye.